Hi, this is Randy Randall of No Age and host of the podcast Hyphenate with Randy Randall. I want to welcome our newest sponsor of the show, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and artists keep 100% of their royalties. Hyphenate listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/HYPHENATE. Go get your music streaming everywhere now.
It's not like every 12-year-old kid on the block was opening for Black Flag.
Yes, what is happening? Welcome to the Hyphenate show. My name is Randy Randall. You are listening to me talk to people who do more than one thing, and usually more than two things, or three things, or four things, or five things. Today is Thursday, June 27th, and I am blown away to welcome one of my heroes on the pod, Mr. Steven McDonald from Redd Kross and the Melvins, currently. I think he's also played in about 6 to 10 other huge rad bands. He will also play with the Dale Crover Band, I believe, the drummer from the Melvins, who has a great record coming out later this summer. But the important thing is that Redd Kross has a new record, their first new record in a few years. And they also have a documentary, excuse me, and a book. And we get into all of that. Steven is firing on all Redd Kross cylinders at the moment. But the record comes out on In the Red Records tomorrow, Friday, June 28th. If you listen to this right now, you can order it or pre-order it, or you can mark your calendars for midnight tonight and go on to the stores, go run down to your local record store or local streaming depot and hear the new Redd Kross record. It's really excited. I feel like this is a great time to be a Redd Kross fan, because there's so many great stories and so many just desserts. I think is that the phrase? I mean, I think just deserves sounds more like it. I mean, this is a band who's been prolific and been on, the cutting edge and the forefront of punk, from at least the Southern California inception of punk via SST and Black Flag. I mean, you heard the clip of the front end of, the cold open of Steven just talking about, going to see Black Flag play at 12 years old and seeing Raymond Pettibon just making art and, just trying to act cool. And Steven and I get into, sort of being perpetual little brothers. I talk a little bit about my older brothers here and just sort of that fun sort of space of like, getting to hang out with the older kids. And I feel like, Steven is a generation above me. So even though he was the little kid to his brother's generation, I'm the little kid to his generation, and he's closer to my brother's age. And I felt very fortunate, to be able to grow up and get introduced to so much cool music and to get, taken to so many rad concerts and just introduced to a whole sort of social world outside of my small, young friend zone and, in school and all the other stuff that kids get to do, but having kind of entry or at least a guide into understanding cool stuff like, music and art and film and, there was a bigger world out there that I think I got to discover, through my older siblings. So that is definitely a topic that we hit on. I think this episode definitely in a lot of ways is a tribute to being little brothers. So I don't know if anybody out there, I'm sure there's some little brothers or little sisters out there who could relate to that. And it is always funny. I think every day that passes, every year that passes, it never ceases to amaze me how funny it is to get older when you still have, but the mindset of being the younger sibling, it always stays with you. But now here I am in my 40s and I'm, fortunate enough to work with bands and artists and other people many years younger than myself, decades younger than myself. And, I never lose that feeling of just still being the kid. I think when Dean and I started really volunteering at the Smell, we were the younger generation. And we have since been eclipsed, 10 times over with the next younger crew of kids. I think, for an all ages venue, it thrives on young people being passionate and having an abundance of free time to go and volunteer and make the space what it is. And, Dean and I definitely spent a lot of time there. But I remember when we were the kids, like, oh, here comes these young whippersnappers. Here's what, there was another generation there before us, and we seemed to be all full of piss and vinegar and energy and excited about everything shot out of a cannon at every single show we went to or played or just anything we did. We were so excited. And I think we're still excited. I still get excited about a lot of stuff, but it changes, it matures. It deepens and richens. The excitement isn't always as tactile or palpable. It can kind of, simmer a little bit. But I hope the excitement is coming across in my voice right now because it's a pleasure to speak to Steven McDonald anytime. I feel very fortunate that over the years our paths have crossed, when he was Off. That's what I was thinking. I think I first probably met Steven when he played in Off, which was the band with Keith Morris and Mario. I thought that was such a rad band. And I think, No Age played with them. And I was so disarmed by Steven first time meeting him that he was really down to earth and really cool. And I'm like, oh my God, you're the guy from Redd Kross. I have these records. I inherited all these records from my brother, at an early age, Neurotica and things. And they were just the coolest band. They just always seemed, Jeff, Steven and his brother Jeff just always seemed like, uber confident, super cool, and just great power pop or just pop in general songwriting chops and hooks and melodies and just really great band. And then later learning about their punk roots and, Net's Got the Hits and getting those records or, I think it was a compilation they had when it's still Redd Kross with the C. And yeah, just, putting the story together over the years and just being such a huge fan and just really, just it's like, legendary status. And, to run into him a few times at shows and then even, catching up in between tours and whatnot. And, it's definitely a pinch me moment. I'm always never not a fan. Is that the correct way to say that? I think so. Well, anyway, I'm rambling now, but, Redd Kross has a new record out on In the Red Records. Go to In the Red Records right now to pre-order yours this very second, or if you cannot wait till tomorrow, or go buy it tomorrow. And there also is a documentary coming out as well as a book. And for news and all things Redd Kross to keep updated with everything they're doing, Born Innocent is the name of the documentary. It's called The Redd Kross Story. And they have new music videos out and all kinds of things coming up. They're also going on tour, this insane, huge tour, which we'll be getting everywhere. And I think you should go see if they're coming to your town, and do not miss this. Get your tickets to see this legendary band in action, featuring Dale Crover of the Melvins on drums now, which is an extra added bonus. If you're a super Melvins fan, you could see 2/3 of the Melvins playing incredible, rad pop songs and punk songs. But to keep up with all of that, go to reddkross.com. That's REDDCROO. No, how many double letters? REDDCROSS.com. Reddkross.com. And stay signed up there. I think there's a newsletter you can get. Also has links to the store. You can buy all their back catalog. I think did Jack White re-release some of these? I feel like there's been a few different reissues of all their great records, and they're playing incredible festivals, incredible tour dates. They'll be going all over the world and all over the U.S. this fall. So do not miss them. You will surely be entertained, and your life will be changed forever if you go see Redd Kross. So get your tickets, get the record, look for the book, look for the documentary, more to be coming soon. And now my conversation with Mr. Steven McDonald. Steven, thanks so much for joining me on Hyphenate. How are you, man?
I'm good, thanks. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. Yeah, I mean, you are the band Hyphenate. I mean, you have worn many hats, meaning you've been in many bands.
Yeah,
Cur-
it's
cur-
true. I
Currently, you're in Redd Kross and Melvins. Are there seven others? I don't know. The Dale Crover Band
No,
maybe is
just
another one.
no, actually,
No.
no. Right now, just Red Cross and Melvins, and
Okay,
Melvins are on a
that's a
little
light.
bit of a well, that's enough because Melvins like to
Yeah,
stay very busy. And,
I was
but
gonna say
Buzz
just
also
two bands, two epically
yeah,
prolific
right,
bands. Yeah,
just 2
just no big
bands, yeah,
deal.
I'm underachieving right now, but, Buzz is about to embark on a solo, tour around the world, so it's a little window for me to, do some Red Cross stuff, so that's what's happening.
That's great. Well, and Red Cross stuff, not just some stuff. I mean, you have a documentary, a new record, kind of a career retrospective, if you will. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, where does this find you in the Red Cross cycle?
Yeah, well, yeah, and then there's also a book coming out in the fall.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see the NFT collection that goes up with it,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the pin
yeah,
set
exactly.
and the bottle
If
caps.
you
Yeah.
if you don't get enough detail, details from the doc, well, then you can explore the book. But yeah, it's been a crazy time. Yeah, there's this doc. I guess the documentary is really what started the ball rolling in a lot of ways. Filmmaker Andrew Reich has been working on this documentary about Jeff and I and our band for the last. He's been working on it for like 8 years, and it's finally come to completion, and it's currently in the festival circuit, as they say. And I
Wow.
guess they're looking for distribution, so hopefully they'll get it to a place that will get it to everyone can watch it from the comfort of their own bathroom or whatever they want, whatever they want to ingest.
They can watch it on the tiniest phone possible or on their iWatch
Yeah,
while they go
sure,
out and
sure.
hiking. You could
Yeah,
watch. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I mean, what does that feel like? I mean, you've had a very storied, very epic life that I think has been documented or well known about in punk rock circles. But I suppose now on the silver screen and in sort of cinematic form, like, does this
Mm.
what? Yeah, how did you first respond when approached by a filmmaker? Has this been the first? I don't know. Is this the first time someone's asked? Or I mean, like, I would imagine, several points in your career, anybody could have said, "Wait a second, this is like a movie. You two brothers are a movie, and you've been in movies." But I mean, in terms of your own story, like, I imagine Francis Ford Coppola at some point was like, "Kids, I gotta tell your story. The world needs to know."
No, Francis never approached me about making a Red Cross doc.
Ah. Oh, I think it would
But,
it would have been it would have been like a narrative, like it's this epic sprawling thing, like from the bowels of suburbia, the two brothers rose to power and fame.
well, the last time I spoke to him was like 3 decades ago.
Okay, okay. I guess he's been
So
busy working on another movie for those 3 decades.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't think my story was quite as dense at that point, but,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, well, this doc actually started about 10 years ago with another filmmaker who is like his name is escaping me, but the cinematographer stayed throughout. His name is Steven Appleford, and he's actually just directed the newest Red Cross video that's dropping tomorrow
Very
on,
cool.
what is that? October I mean, June 12th. God, October, oh
Yeah.
my god, I'm thinking
You're
about our
ready.
fall tour.
You're ready for
But,
it. Yeah.
yeah, so but Andrew Reich entered the picture about 8 years ago, and he approached me through mutual friends, and, his background is actually in television sitcoms, which is kind of fitting, and, in a
This is
strange
great.
sort of way, and this is his first foray into documentary filmmaking, and as you said, like, in certain circles, a lot of people know our story, and I had done a podcast with, the great Damian Abraham? Da
Yeah.
from Fucked Up, excuse me, and,
Yep, exactly.
sorry,
Yeah.
Damian, I'm getting your name wrong. But, Damian Abrams, is that it? I think, yeah, anyways,
That sounds right. Yeah, yeah.
Jamie from Fucked Up, who I adore and love, and, I'm just
Yeah.
having a brain freeze, but, he has a great podcast called Turned Out a Punk, and I've
Yep.
done it a few times, we've gone some pretty deep dives, and, Andrew just heard some of my more, unique stories from my youth of being like a 12, 13-year-old punk rocker, and and Andrew went from being interested in our music and our history to like really being kind of obsessive about telling more of our story in documentary form. And yeah, I mean, when he approached me, the thought was a little daunting because I think it's sort of like, since I started so young, we did our first shows. I was like 11 and 12, maybe 11 at our very first, and then 12 when we really started doing Redd Kross and recording and stuff. And um, because of that, I'm still like 10 years younger than your average person. I feel like I relate more to people in their mid 60s than I do to people in their mid 50s in many ways. And so, I just feel like I relate when I hear people, celebrities that have been like belly aching about doing their memoir or something because they feel like it's some kind of, milestone about age and also just, this idea that you've ripened to some kind of wisdom that, you're not sure, like I myself still feel like I'm trying to prove something. I'm still like hungry and ambitious and I'm not ready to, sink into nostalgia thing, but not to say I'm not proud of our crazy history, and it's fun to talk about it, but I still am trying to create the next chapter.
Yeah, I mean that makes total sense. But it is nice, I think, to sort of have the spotlight on you to the degree that, you know what I mean. I feel like a band as epic as Red Cross, can kind of get its due. It's time in the spotlight. Because I think
Well, I mean,
there's been several generations of Red Cross as a band, and
well,
you know what I mean.
it
That's nice.
it's funny, like, I think that Andrew's basic thesis for the film was that he views us as this underrated band that, that deserves more attention or more investigation, and that's a nice thing to hear, and when the few times I've seen screenings and to see people that I really respect, peers, and say really nice things, it's remarkably humbling and, but it's weird. There's a part of me that I still kinda like, "Okay," but, like, I maybe it's just whatever, the negative talk that any artist battles, but I always kinda go into this maybe it's a imposter syndrome where I'm like, "Yeah, I guess." I mean,
Like
I
what
don't
band is
there's a
that?
part of me where I'm like,
I
"Yeah,
want
but we still."
Yeah,
Well
like, you know what I mean?
well, I'm
Like,
just a little
you
bit like,
people
"Come on,
describe your
Space,
band, you're
we
like, "I
haven't
like that
really."
band too." Sorry.
Well, or I just always feel like, Thanks for the nice things, but I don't feel like we've really proven ourselves yet." That's how
Mm.
I always feel, and so now we have this new record, and I think in many ways, when I hear it, it's like a companion piece to this film, and because I saw a few early cuts or I saw some trailers that inspired for me some songwriting, and just the in general mission for me was to sort of like, well, let's make good on all the nice things that people have said that, if I feel like some of it's unwarranted, well, then I want to live up to it. And that's what I've been trying to do, I guess.
That's inspiring. That's a nice idea, of kind of the tail wagging the dog, but in a beautiful way, in a nice way of kind of seeing like, your life story, or at least your band's life story presented on screen. That sort of inspires this, like, well, we got to make the record that band in that movie would make.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't wanna be dismissive or whatever, I mean,
Yeah.
so grateful that people take any time to think about us, much less say nice things, but at the same time, it's really hard for me to not feel like, "Yeah, but I've got so much thank you, that's
Mm.
awesome, I wanna show you what I really can do," you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I don't know what that is, if that's some kind of insatiable craziness that I'm putting on display by admitting that, but, at any rate, that's I think if I don't know, and I guess the thing I would say about the new record is I feel like, in my more generous, kind to myself moments, I feel like we have kind of done that with this or, whatever. I'm excited for people to hear it.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, I saw the video for in the single, the first one that came up when I think the trailer went out. There was, the
Yeah.
and yeah, and it sounds incredible. I mean, you I think from a personal side, I relate to you a lot as the perpetual younger brother. I had an older brother who was about 10 years older, and he introduced me to a lot of music and really shaped my life in huge ways. He was into skateboarding and into playing guitar, but my brother passed away when he was 25 and I was about 12.
Mm.
And so
Oh,
I inherited a lot of his records and guitars and things, but it was at such a pivotal age for me,
mm,
in my adolescence, and kind of the hero worship of having an older sibling. And then to
mm,
sort of, everybody deals with grief in their own ways, but I really took it upon myself to sort of like, I think it felt like there was a roadmap carved out, like how to be cool. I was like, he was cool. He was my hero, and still is my
yeah,
hero in so many ways. So I think a lot of what I did was sort of in not necessarily in service, but sort of in and it would be hard to say it wasn't shaped by that. I think I obviously had to make a lot of my decisions. I had to do a lot of hard work on my own. I had to, I was the one I wasn't trying to live his life, but I definitely in some ways was inspired. Absolutely, I'd be disingenuous to say I wasn't. But
mm.
for you, and obviously you were the little brother, literally, but also figuratively. It sounds like too, in within the community and sort of punk in general. Is that accurate, or how do you sort of find yourself as the? Are you aware of it, or how does it feel in that regard?
Uh, well, I mean, like I said, like I always kind of feel like I identify with people about a decade older than me. My
Yeah,
taste in music,
same. Yeah.
you would think that I'm like a boomer, like mid-era boomer even, and but it's no, I'm very much in the Gen X, and yeah, and the thing about, I'm really sorry to hear about your
Oh,
brother,
well, he was
and
he.
I,
Well, I'll
I didn't
say
know that
he.
part of your story.
Oh, it's all right.
That
Yeah, I mean,
that's
it's so personal, but
surprising.
he was a huge fan of you and Red Cross. I have records from his collection that are Red
Really? Oh
Cross
my
records,
god.
and that I
Oh,
inspired. I learned a lot about. He went to a lot of shows. He was very active, and as a
mm,
fan in a lot of Southern California music. So he was a huge fan of Red Cross, and
wow.
so
Well, I'm
yeah,
honored. I'm
yeah.
honored to know that, and, yeah, well, no, I mean, it's something I think about a lot, about the sibling relationship, and just that, how the certain figures can loom large in your life, and like, I remember even as a kid, like, how much and I didn't know that's what it was, but I wanted my brother's approval so much,
Yeah.
and, like, the first time I chose a record at the record store, it was all about, in very many ways, when I think about it, it was about my impressing my brother, and
Mm.
my mom took me to the record shop. I think I had, like, gotten shots or something, and I was 5 years old, and she was rewarding me for being a good kid, and because I don't think I was even in school yet. I think that Jeff would have been there, but he was probably in school, and I chose Killer by Alice Cooper Group, and this would have been, like, 1972 because 'cause I'm 57,
That's rad.
and I chose Get Your Ya-Ya's Out, the Rolling Stones live album,
It's
which
classic.
was crazy to think, only 3 years old at the time, but, and I remember bringing those records home, listening to them on our little record player, waiting for Jeff to come home. I was so excited for him to hear them, and when he got home, he was like, "That's cool. The Alice Cooper record's cool. The Stones record, we already have a bunch of those songs on other records, so that was not a great
Oh
choice."
no.
And it destroyed me. I remember it destroyed me. I remember I was just freaking out,
What?
and I didn't even know why I was freaking out. And looking back now, it's like, I wanted his approval. I
Yeah.
wanted to impress him. And he since has, like, dialed back that, because he didn't know at, let's see, if I was 5, he was 8 or 9.
Yeah.
He didn't know that, those recordings were, like, the definitive live versions of many of the songs.
Yeah.
That version of Midnight Rambler was forever going to go down in history as, like, the definitive live version, but, and he loves that record. In fact, about our new record, Jeff was, because we've got some loose endings on the record, and Jeff's like, "Oh, I like the way the song kinda falls apart. It's very Get Your Ya-Ya's."
You're like, I told you. I told
The
you.
record I brought
Yeah, you
home.
mean my
Yeah,
record? Oh, that's
yeah.
great. Would you guys
It
write your names on the
is.
back of your records? Did you know like which
Oh,
one was
yeah,
whose? Like,
well,
to keep it separate.
Jeff, no, we shared
Okay.
a record collection, a vinyl collection, which Jeff still has most of those records, and, I let him take them when we we shared a room till we were 16, until
Wow.
I was 16, and then, so we shared record collection, and it Je and in fact, it's in the documentary. Jeff's looking through our original copy of the White Album, which is, covered entirely with wacky packages. Remember those stickers?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And, I remember getting that record. We returned Coke bottles. You could get a nickel back for each Coke bottle, and our family was, there was no limitations put on how much sugar and caffeine we ingested as children. So, um,
Yeah.
we had, we probably took back 100 or so of those bottles and cobbled together the 450 to buy the double record. And, it was a campaign that we were both involved in. And it's crazy to think that that record, that was probably like 1971. That record was only like 3 years old also. But, um, you know, uh, but yeah, I mean, we definitely, I mean, we didn't separate things, but I think CDs had become more of my collection by the time we separated our stuff, and I was 16, and that's around the time CDs were coming out, and everybody was rebuying their classic records in the digital format, so you could hear without the crackles and the pops from your beat up old vinyl. And so I was like, yeah, just take the vinyl. I get CDs.
Yeah. You're a child of the 80s. Like, I don't need
Yeah,
this.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
that's when
Yeah.
I guess my prime era, or whatever, teen prime. I graduated high school in 1985.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, my brother graduated in '88, and I should say I have two brothers. The oldest one passed away, and the second one is still with me. But it was one of those things. In our it was a we're still close, but it's hard. It's hard when anybody is gone. For some reason I related more to my older brother, and that he was sort
Oh,
of
I
more part of
see.
my
So
life
you're
at
the
that
youngest
age,
of
and so
3? Are you the youngest of
yeah,
3?
the first two. Exactly. Yeah, the first two were from my mom's first marriage as well, so we
Gotcha,
don't share a dad, but we but
gotcha.
we all grew up in the same house together. They're about
Oh,
11,
wow.
12 years older, and just the coolest guys. It was very Southern California skateboarding, surfing, music, band,
Oh, that's cool.
drum
And
set up in the in the garage.
they'd let little Randy hang out, and they were inclusive with
I
you, and
Y
that's so cool.
Yeah, well,
That's really
I was really, the obnoxious little brother, like you could imagine. Like, he's the kid at the
sure.
shows, the kid
"Get
at
out of
the
my
skate co
stuff."
wherever was hanging out. Bring your brother with you. Like, man, I'm coming with snot and, chocolate bars melting down my face. Like, wait for me. I wanna go. I wanna go see the show. I wanna go. What are you guys doing? What are you doing? Get
And
out
you
of here. But that was a lifelong thing. I've now in my 40s. I think I've finally can cop to it. I never once I was in my 20s. I was like, how do you know about all this stuff? Like, I don't know. I'm just cool. I just I saw
Yeah.
I saw these bands in the 90s. I just happened like because most kids you take somebody to introduce you to things. I
Yeah.
felt very fortunate to have that sort of leg up on things, just as awareness, a guiding light of like, this is what's cool. That's great.
Well, I mean,
But
I also
you know,
always felt really overwhelmed by hanging out with older people too. I mean, like, so yeah, I'm the age of your older siblings, or maybe your second oldest. Is that what it is?
yeah,
And
yeah, I think yeah, they
you
graduated '88, so a couple of
oh,
years
80,
younger.
the
But yeah,
second,
just right in
see,
there.
the oldest graduated in 88. Right. Okay. So I'm
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm the older. Right. Right. Got it. So yeah, well, like, because like so my brother's 4 years older, and he was always wanted me around. Actually, he kind of like strength in numbers. I think I was his partner in crime or whatever, but it's more like strength in numbers. So as opposed to being like shooed away, he would almost kind of grab me and put me up front and be like, "I've got this
Oh,
band,
that's
and
cool.
our bass player's 11 years old." And, but, I was up for it. I went to concerts with him when I was 8 years old and stuff, and then but I remember, like, hanging out when I was 12, and, like, part of our crazy story is that we were opening for Black Flag when they were just starting, and those guys were in their 20s. They were, like, twice my age, and I spent a lot of time, just doing my best to keep up, and people would talk about things that were way beyond my I mean, I knew Chuck, and this sounds just like bragging or whatever, but I knew Chuck Dukowski before he was Dukowski, he was Gary, and, um, and when he started going by the name Chuck Dukowski, I didn't know about Charles Bukowski, and but I always kinda had to, and Raymond Pettibone was in the corner doing his art, and it was shocking and amazing, and I had to kinda act like, "Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I get it. Yeah." And I know he's gonna shoot bricks, to tell you the truth. So, now I've caught to
Yeah.
the point where, like, I have a hair trigger about anybody feeling that way around me, like, I'm always like, in fact, Anna never believes me, my wife, Anna, the great Anna Warnker of That
Mhm.
Dog and
Yeah.
other things, and at one time early in our relationship, I had said to her something about Led Zeppelin. It's like, "Oh, well, it's this song, you know of Led Zeppelin, right?" Blah, and I kinda spelled out some song in a way where I was kinda like saying, like, "It doesn't matter if you don't know the deep cuts or whatever." And she was so offended. She thought I was being like a snob and facetious. And she's like, "I know Led Zeppelin. Give me a break." But it's like, I'm so conscious of not putting someone in that position where they have to kinda act like they know more than they do because I'm like, the only reason I do is because I'm old, you know? It's not because 'cause I'm cooler, it's like,
Yeah.
because I tried to keep up with people twice as old as me, and now I'm getting old and whatever. But, whatever. It's an interesting, dynamic that, only, like, the younger, the scrappy kids that dare to keep up with their older friends or siblings, might have to endure, but, whatever.
I
It's paid
totally
off.
understand. I totally understand what you mean. There's something about just, you know, getting old, just having to live a life and have X some number of years underneath your belt that it's hard to really take credit for. It's like I didn't really do anything. I just lived through this time period, and this is by happenstance I was born here and I was at this time and place, and this is all the things I went to. So by a certain age, I've acquired this life, and there are certain actions you've taken and records you've written and tours and amps. I'd be more impressed if people were like, you carried your amp up that many flight of stairs. It's like, yeah, that was something I accomplished. I did that for years. I couldn't do it now, but so that's an accomplishment. But the fact that I just happened to be there at this alive and have relatively not horrible taste, enough to know enough to go see a band, at that age, where at a large venue where there were hundreds of other people, thousands of other people. Like, I don't deserve accolades, necessarily for that. Like,
Well,
it's not an accomplishment.
I think the thing is, it's also just I think at some point, um, I get impressed by the fact that, you know, there's certain opportunities that came that have, come across my, consciousness or my desk, and, even as a little kid, and I'm impressed with, like, the tenacity of that little kid that, like, didn't squander some of them and didn't back off from them, and even though might have seemed intimidating, still managed to muster the courage to show up for it, and I agree, yeah, I don't wanna self-grandize over luck or happenstance, but at the same time, you know it's like, whatever, like, I play in the Melvins and, I love those guys and Buzz has got a competitive spirit and so do I. And he would talk about, how isolated he was in the Pacific Northwest growing up and stuck out in, an isolated part of an isolated region, and so when we talk about our youth and punk rock and, I've got this crazy experience and he'd be like, "Yeah, but you were in LA." And he's like, "I was in the middle of nowhere. I mean, to even get a record, you had to like Pony Express it and it took 3 months and you had to send in like Cracker Jack boxes." And although, yes, that is true, but I always kinda have to remind him, it's like, "Dude, it's not like every 12-year-old kid on the block was opening for Black Flag, much less had any idea of, like, how to find these people, or if you did, what were you gonna do with it, and this knowledge, and I was in the suburbs and, it's like Los Angeles does not have the best rapid transit. And it's true, Hollywood was only about 15 miles away, but with like, you couldn't just hop on a bus and make your way up to Sunset Boulevard. You had to like come together with a plan and you had to be convincing and you had to like, if you had a parent or someone or an older sibling that was like, took you seriously enough, you had to still be very tenacious to like, plead your case why they should bring you to this. And, my brother and I definitely were partners in that crime for sure. And, so it's, but at any rate, yes,
Yeah.
I feel, well, also it's, nowadays with the internet, kids can find things and I mean, I think it's overwhelming. There's too much to choose from, but, I am, we both share that in common that we managed to, like, find a network and find our people, the old way,
Yeah.
and, you know,
Yeah.
by creating our own thing and sort of sending out like a flare of sort, a beacon to find your people, and, so, yeah, I mean, I think that's something you can take credit for too,
Yeah.
that you've
The stick to your gunsness of it, sticking with it and, not
yeah,
not
yeah, and
wavering too
just
far.
and searching it out, finding it, and even if there were hundreds of other kids, there weren't, like, tens of thousands, you weren't going to arenas, it wasn't mainstream, it still was underground.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a wild one. I mean, I was just thinking that idea of sticking to your guns. I mean, was there a time in your life, and I guess this speaks to the hyphenate idea as well, but at some point were you ever attracted to maybe to putting the bass down, putting music away, going a different direction? Was there? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I was not, not college, maybe more Hollywood, maybe more different directions. Like what was that like? The time in the desert.
Well, I mean, I've always been up for challenges. I mean, at some
Hmm.
point, I came to this, like, self-help sort of mentality where it was like, if it scares you, lean into it.
Hmm.
And, and so certain opportunities had come my way. I mean, just some of it actually was, inheriting Los Angeles too. I mean, like, just crazy things. Like, by the time I was I guess, like 20 years old, I had been playing nightclubs in Los Angeles for 8 years, like almost a decade. So I had this crazy experience and yeah, certain like I auditioned for the movies River's Edge and
Wow.
and like just for example,
Yeah.
and like I'm not an actor. I wouldn't come from that background, but like someone that I used to hang out with was a set, and a set designer and suggested Jeff and myself to the filmmakers, and I loved the movie Over the Edge, and that's what they were inspired by. And although I didn't nail the audition, uh, but it's one of those kind of culturally cool things that I it's a little feather in my cap, but that I haven't talked about in years. But yeah, all sorts of different things. It's like by the time Redd Kross had been going at it for 20 years, I was in my early 30s, and and it was crazy because it was kinda just at the dawn of, like, social media, and I didn't realize that independent music was gonna now have, like, this new window and this new way to get that weren't so reliant on gatekeepers anymore, and I think I was still kind of, like, conditioned in the old school that there was, like, some kind of expiration date on a rock musician and that you had to achieve a certain level of success by a certain age or you needed to give up on it and start trying to approach adult life from a different angle. So by the time I was 31, I kind of felt like, oh, I guess I've been sort of blindly pursuing dreams that I had when I was 11 years old. And I made career decisions about my adult life at such a young age. And I started to question it a little bit. So I did kind of take a step back, but I never took a step back from music itself. I just took a step back from being a performer. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I'm supposed to do it more from the sidelines and or be mentor a bit or I started learning how to produce and like we were just talking
Yeah.
earlier, that's something that you relate to. And but at the same time, I think that, it's been this constant journey of kind of realizing, well, how do I complete the picture of a fulfilling life for me? Because, yes, there are the practical matters that we have to concern ourselves with, like paying the rent. Uh, and then, and if we're privileged enough to like be able to also concern ourselves with, how do we pay the rent in a fulfilling way, and I just say that in the most sort of general sense, privileged, that, I'm very grateful that I've had supportive parents and a great wife and a great life that, wants me to, try to figure it all out and wanna stand by me as they do it. Some people are very lucky and plan A goes as planned, but that's not really what happens for most people, including, that's not even just musicians. That's like kinda anyone. Most people don't work in the field
Yeah.
that they went to school for or whatever, from what I understand, and, so, it's taken a bit of flexibility and I guess courage and willingness to, um to not to fake it till you make it or whatever bumper sticker applies, but, to,
Nuke the whales.
just just to, like, get out of bed and give it a shot, and that's what the 12-year-old me did too, and it's like, nowadays, the temptation to, like, not even leave the house is like, it's it's you can make a good argument for it, why you don't need to, and I definitely come from the belief, I think that, um, that that getting, just leaving the door is half the battle, and leaving those half the battle, and just being open to whatever might come from that. And like the experience I had last night, there were so many examples of it. Like I got to participate in an event for a recently departed friend, and it was he had been sick for a long time, and so this was more of a less of a shock that he was gone, and we just really were so grateful that this person wasn't in pain, and we got to celebrate him, and he was a music person that brought people together, and he loved music, so it was just a wonderful night of celebrating him and the music that he loved and the people that he brought together, and some of those people were people that I had worked with, had produced, had one called me a mentor last night, tears in her eyes. I
Mm.
started to get misty too. And and at any rate, and when some of these things were happening, I felt like I had no idea what I was doing, and I felt like I was way over my head, and that I was messing it all up. And 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 you know what? It's like just don't get strung out on drugs and don't chicken out and don't like I don't know, now I'm gonna sound like Tony Robbins, but it was one of those rare experiences where all the times where I felt like I had no idea what I was doing and that I was blowing it, that just by sticking with it and not bailing, um, in some ways that was enough. And it wasn't till long after, like a night like last night, where I got to see from 20 years ago that I did something positive rather than what I had negatively been telling myself that I botched it up, and it's not true. And yeah, and so and just I'm sorry, I'm all over
No,
the
no,
place.
no. It's okay. I mean, I can jump in. I'm so sorry for for your
Well,
loss too.
I
But
just
it's
wanna
it's
I guess
yeah,
I wanna try to wrap that
yeah,
up by saying,
yeah.
like, with my bandmates in the Melvins, and I think I might have told you the story once, Randall. I went to an event for them, and it was early in my time with them. I've been with them for like 7 or 8 years now, and at the beginning, it was a little trying because as much as I have been somewhat established as a cult musician or whatever, underground musician. Those guys had a big audience of diehard fans. And I felt like at the time I was I self-consciously felt like I was kind of just being tolerated by their following and doing my best to gain acceptance and still be myself, which is a challenging proposition. And we once did this panel at a music school, this really cool music school in Oklahoma City. Um, put together by the manager of the Flaming Lips, and there was a room full of like 100 kids wanting to know from the great Buzz Osborne and Dale Crover how do they pursue their dreams. And, um, and at the very end of it, I sat quiet, and at the very end, I finally spoke up and I said, "You know, a lot of you kids might be like Buzz and Dale, but a lot of you guys might be more like me, and you might find that plan A is great, but you might need to investigate plan B, plan C, plan D. You might do a bunch of different things, and hopefully they're all related to music and what you're learning now, but it you know, it's rather than what you have to do, it's I like to look at it as what you get to do, what you get to learn that you can do." And, um, and then right after that, Dale contradicted me by saying, "Well, oh, yeah, and that's another thing. There is no plan B," which is very Melvins, and it was fine. But at the
Yeah.
time, I took it like, "Screw you, dude." Like, like you just
We didn't all
contradicted me.
play with Kurt Cobain in our 20s.
Totally,
Sorry.
like, how many of these kids that have made their way to Oklahoma City from, like, an even smaller town in, like, a
Yeah.
cornfield are gonna have some of the opportunities that you, granted, have not squandered, but are gonna have those opportunities. And,
Yeah.
um, and maybe they should be flexible to the idea that their plan A is not the best plan. And, at any rate,
Yeah.
and it whatever, one
W-
size does not fit all,
Yeah.
but but I think that's kind of where you're coming from, Randall. I think it's one of the things that we relate to, and granted, Dale is opening for Redd Kross on this tour as a solo artist, and he's trying out plan other plans as well. So, and I love him
It's
dearly,
of
and I don't
course.
hold that against him. But I'm just saying, like, there are more ways to skin the cat, and that's part of, I think probably in your mixing, in your producing, you're constantly having to look at these things, or in more general terms, but like this record we just made, each song would be like, okay, well, we listened to the demo, like, okay, how do we want to skin this cat? And you got to be open to it, um, and that's, I don't know, you can use that concept in many different ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. No, I mean,
Sorry, it's
no
such a
disrespect.
mouthful. I hope it made sense.
No, it's good. It's good. No disrespect to Dale and Buzz. Obviously, they, no one can take away from all the decades and decades of hard work and perseverance. I mean, I think,
Definitely.
many people, Chad Channing does not have a band like the Melvins. Jason Everman does not have a band like the
The
Melvins.
thing
You know what I
about
mean?
the
These
Melvins,
two guys, they were doing it before it. Just because you played with Kurt Cobain doesn't mean you were going to be a millionaire set
not
for the
at
rest of your
all.
life. No, I mean, it's
It,
not to
it
say that.
means nothing.
However, you know what I mean? They've been doing great music for decades and decades and working their asses off,
The
as you
thing I
know.
think those
It's
the thing I think those guys would own on that topic is like, sure, we've had a few opportunities, but the thing is, we've never squandered a single one of them. And and that's half the battle, or that's more than half the battle, to
oh my
recognize
god.
them. And then when they're happening, because it's so hard to know sometimes, and then to follow through. And those guys are the kings of that. And it's been a big lesson for me, actually, as a matter of fact. But
Yeah, well,
yes,
I mean, you
not for
look at
anything.
those, yeah, you look at those tour dates, and you know what I mean. That is not a young that is not a that is not an old man's tour. You know what I mean? Those tour dates are not for the weak. Those tour dates are not for people who do not love grinding it out and eating at truck stops. That's what those tour dates tell me. You know what I mean?
Well, they do it a little
I
differently.
can
But
recognize that. Yeah.
one of the brilliant things at the Melvins, they've been doing it for so long, and they've been so consistent that they can play in the United States. They can play for 9 weeks, and each drive can be about 2 hours if they want.
Oh, okay. That's not. No, you're
It's
right. Yeah, that
amazing. They
that
can
that means
play
the
every
the class of
little.
cuisine goes much higher with a
No, I'm just
2 hour
saying
drive.
that, like,
You can be
in
a lot
terms
better.
of
Yeah,
the grind, they're not 8-hour drives, they're like 2-hour drives, and Buzz finds the Whole Foods on the way. And
I see.
so,
Yes, got it.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
but anyway, so, like, yeah, sure, it's a grind, you gotta lift the gear, and you gotta get up, and you gotta do the show, but, like, the routine also becomes
That's
kind
the
of,
fun part.
yeah, it's like you've got your itinerary, and you don't have to figure out how to have a productive day. It's like, well, we've got this routine, and at the end of the day, we'll sleep well knowing that we didn't squander the day, you know?
Yeah, I want to. I don't, or I should say, I don't want to miss. The I alluded to it earlier with Coppola and acting. The Spirit of '76. How did this
But yeah,
happen? I don't know if you guys if you ever talk about this or you reach on this. This was probably one of my earliest childhood memories of Redd Kross, outside of just hearing the music coming from my brother's room and in the car and everywhere
it's
else
funny.
in life. But that film was huge, and I don't often see documentation of it or many stories of it.
It's covered in the documentary a little bit, because I mean, I guess it is such a
Okay.
unique thing for an underground band, but, yeah, Sophia and Roman were fans of Red Cross. They were cool kids, and growing up in the Napa Valley, and we had a little bit of a following in Northern California, and the way we intersected with them, like, I lived in a Hawthorne, and we had a regular little suburban track home, my parents, and, one day the kitchen phone rang, that one that's on the wall, and, it was Francis Coppola's
Yeah.
office asking if we would like to, meet Francis at the Van Nuys Airport and fly up to Napa Valley with him, in a private plane, and, because his children would like to meet us and they had a business proposition. It was the craziest thing. So we got to the point, and so we were like, "What?" And when we realized this wasn't a joke, and like, so we went there the next day, and he was very nice. And granted, like, I huge respect, but I'll admit I had never seen Apocalypse Now. I'd never seen The Godfather. I knew his name, but I that was
Yeah.
probably best that because I would have been totally paralyzed. But he told us a story. He goes, "Yeah, so I was flying home. I was working today in LA, and I was flying home, and I had called home, and I asked my daughter, Sophia, if there's anything she'd like me to bring home from Los Angeles for her, and she said, 'Yeah, can you bring Red Cross?'" And that's how that happened, and,
Oh.
that we were basically just on a shopping list for Sophia. And, but when we got up there, um, they were cool kids, and Roman and Sophia were familiar with these Super 8 films that we had done with the filmmaker Dave Markey, Desperate Teenage Love Dolls and Love Doll Superstar, and he was starting his own little film company where he was trying to do some, like, low budget style Roger Corman sort of exploitation films from the '70s, like his father had started in that world, and there had just been a big success with this Bill and Ted's movie, this buddy flick about valley dudes, and they thought that Jeff and I could do our own sort of Red Cross take on those characters, and then Roman had dreamed up the idea of the youngest Reiner son, um, oh my god, not Rob, oh, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, it's such a long time ago, but, so the youngest Reiner son, who's actually a fine artist now, but, asked him if he would write this movie, and Lucas Reiner is his name. It's Carl Reiner's youngest son, and, and Lucas just he was great, and Jeff and I immediately bonded with him. He's an LA guy, and we were around the same age group, and I know that we influenced him to wanna cast David Cassidy in the film, and,
Yeah.
which was
And the
kinda
Visine, you needed
key.
the Visine for the
Yeah, yeah,
fuel
so,
to
yeah,
be
all the
Visine,
pop
and you
culture
couldn't hit the
references.
gremlin or the gremlin would explode, and it's great.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So there was all these top '70s pop culture references, and just a brief synopsis, it's like these 2 kids from a small town or suburban wherever, USA, and these time travelers land in their town, but these time travelers are from the future, post-apocalyptic future, and they're trying to find, the formation of the United States, and they're trying to go back to 1776 because the Constitution has been lost. And during their travels, the machine messes up and lands in 1976 instead of 1776. And Jeff and I greet them, and we're their hosts, and they're confused, and we're both, hilarity ensues.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's fantastic. I mean, it's yeah, it's one of the essential tomes of my cult DNA film love.
It's a great, 4th of July watch, and it's on YouTube, so your next 4th of July weekend, when you're, maybe, yeah, after the barbecue's done,
Yeah.
you might wanna
Fi
check it out.
Fire Spirit of '76. Well, I don't wanna keep you
Yeah.
too long, Stephen. You've been very gracious, to share your time. I'm trying to think where, what's next? Obviously, the docs will be available for streaming, will be coming to people soon. Is there any news on that or
Well, I mean, it's,
books,
currently
records?
working the
Yeah.
festival circuit. They're
Okay.
trying to find distribution, so that's the goal. Hopefully, the film will eventually be on a streaming platform and maybe playing in some cooler revival houses, nationwide. Um, and we have a new album. It's a self-titled album. It's a double record, and it's coming out on In the Red Records on June 28th. And the next single drops tomorrow, June 12th. And um, I don't know when people would be hearing this. And then October 10th, there's a memoir, and it's like a sort of like an oral history, written in that format with a great writer, Dan Epstein, collaborated with Jeff and myself, and it was taken from hours and hours of interviews he did separately with us, and so it's fun to read the contradictions and the different perspectives on the same events.
Oh my god.
And there's lots of cool pictures. It's definitely a deep dive. It's a little bit like the documentary is sort of like for the uninitiated. It's like ideally anybody could like it would find the film, interesting and not boring, even if you didn't know anything about us. And then the book is more of a deep dive and gets more into your sort of like desperate teenage love dolls and tater tots, etc. And and then the album was just a great starting point for anybody that doesn't know anything about the band because I feel like it's a great um, sort of uh, example of where we've been, who we are now, and what we're aiming for in our what I like to call the beginning of our third act.
That's fantastic. I know. I don't know why the brother thing didn't even dawn on me. I mean, you're early on in the tradition of the brother bands. I mean, has this ever? I'm sure this has been brought up in horribly researched interviews. Like, like, are you guys like Oasis? Are you guys like the Black
Mm.
Crowes? This, but obviously, we've established that there's a much tighter bond and friendship there than the Gallagher
Well, I don't know
brothers.
if it's any tighter. I did maybe we're just crazy enough to like, weather the strains of it, or we haven't been
Yeah.
challenged enough yet to maybe, for all I know that the Gallagher brothers and the Davies brothers definitely, those guys have experienced um I mean, maybe the struggle is what keeps us together. When you get to the success, then the real problems start.
Yeah, it's real easy to not fight about money when there is no money. But once
Yeah,
that's I think
exactly.
that's a big thing of it. Well, and all
But
like I'm
yeah,
coming from a duo with another just two guys in a band. That we've always been Dean and I are kind of the thing. I always people ask about it. It's like we're brothers, but it's also like we're
yeah,
married, and it's like we're also like we're in business together.
yep,
It's the marriage without the
yeah,
sex, the brothers without the family part of it. And,
yeah.
it's all of the relationships without the good parts of it. But we do get to make music. But it's just anything you do that long. There's the good, the bad, all of it all together.
Bands are tough. They are just tough. I mean, and once again, not to get too self-helpy, but I always think of them as sort of like a dysfunctional family, and
Hmm.
and how and I think some one of the things that sort of defines what that is often as sort of like rigid roles, and it becomes like difficult to expand and explore what are the possibilities for you within that delicate system. And so it's definitely a challenge, and I feel for anybody that especially at a really young age, trying to find themselves in that context. Um, and that's one of the things I mean, I loved watching Get Back, the Beatles doc over the pandemic. It was really informative to me for the creative process with the new Redd Kross record because those guys, experienced all these things that we're talking about first, and I've always said that, but I we got to see, like, so specifically how much that's true and just how gracious and wise they were at such a young age. How they navigated it is mesmerizing, and, but it's also demystifying, you know, to hear them, like, hashing out a new song, something that you've always just thought of as, like, untouchable, and it's like, no, it sounded scrappy at first, and
Yeah.
it took stick-to-itness for them too, and it was stressful for them too, and but the thing that you could recognize in it, I think that one of the things that I really got from the edit they selected was how much through it all that John and Paul were just so into each other and, really valued what the other person brought to the table, and we know now in retrospect from the interviews that they both missed it as well later, and it was great to see them in that moment doing their best to overlook the tough stuff and 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 be present and get what they could out of this because they seem to recognize its specialness in real time. And for those of us that have been lucky enough to stumble into their own version of that, um, you know, and for me, it's important to recognize it in real time and to fight for it and to um, try to be my best self to weather the friction and the competitions and the whatever you know however it manifests in your relationship. But it seems to be some kind of universal that extends into any shared responsibility, I suppose. But in the musical way, where we create something together, it can touch all of us as human beings somehow. And so and not to get, pretentious, but it feels important.
Yeah, well, and I think there is something to the friction too. That I mean, I think
Yeah.
as I mature, I look to minimize friction within my own life. Again to kind of be in the Tony Robbins world, but just I mean, I'm not I don't need frustrations and frictions. Like I got enough. I've lived a long enough life. I'm not looking to put
Yeah.
myself in positions that I know are going to be full of confrontations and things. But I think there is something about that creative experience or that musical experience that it's just like warts and all that almost makes it better. If not, it's not the flaw, it's the feature in it. Something I always feel, it's like it's supposed to be this way. You're supposed to get on each other's nerves and challenge each other, and you almost but make each other rise to the occasion. You get be better because of it. It wouldn't be the same if everybody just loved everything the other person did.
I think that you need to walk into these things with a certain amount of knowing that you're going to be challenged on a certain level, and then because everyone's process is different, and I think for me, it's come down to like, but at the end, is there a net gain? Or is
Hmm.
it, a net loss? And not that I'm an economist in any way, but to use that metaphor, you still have to decide. But as long as I can feel that there's that, then it's worth. Then it's worth it.
Yeah, well, maybe there's a future for you could be the Tony Robbins of bands. This is somewhere down the line you can get hired in as a consultant, and when they want
Well,
to fire you, he's like, I just don't think it's a good idea. You can't fire me now. I don't think it's good for your band if you fire me. You should keep me on
you
for
mean like
many
the
more
Metallica
years. Yeah,
movie, like the
yeah,
Metallica movie when they were trying to like,
yeah.
Frank was like, "Hey, I'm moving to Northern California." Really?
Uh, I think we were thinking of firing you and dropping you. Like, no, it wouldn't be good for you to do that now. Like that's when it's a bad therapist relationship. But as an advisor, you've obviously you lived you had an incredible journey, and the road is still long ahead of you. But obviously, yeah, these pearls of wisdom don't come cheap. You've
Well, I
you've
mean,
you've
really,
earned it.
and once again, like, I mean, like, I definitely don't want to be in a soapbox. I'm really talking specifically about my own experience, and just knowing that you and I have had similar conversations. So I'm
Yeah,
hoping
yeah, yeah.
that some of it's ringing a bell for you too, as well. But I mean, I mean, this is what this is how I make my decisions, and take that and do what that with it what you will.
Yes.
You know, it's
Absolutely.
me
Well,
kind of
yeah.
trying
Well,
to
thank you.
encourage myself that it's worth it.
It's worth doing. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, and it's, yeah, it gets sweeter as time goes on. It sounds like, you and Jeff are in a really good place, and with the documentary, the record, the book, the tour, everything,
Well, no, we're in a
everything's
really
been,
strange place because of all these opportunities, but we've put together some great stuff that I'm really proud of, and as long as we can weather this strain of, like, now following through on all the shared responsibilities, then we weren't then we handled it okay,
yeah.
and, I'm committed to being functioning.
That's it, right? Yeah, get off the couch, go greet the day, go put your pants on,
Yeah,
do what's asked of you. Just one foot in front of the other. All the good, hang in there, kitty. All the good posters. They all mean something. Well, thank you
very
so much,
good.
Stephen, for coming on. I appreciate you making the time. And
Yeah, it's
everyone will
great.
go out and see you on this tour, and we'll have all of the wall being in line at the merch table when you come to our town.
Well, yeah, July 2nd, we start our tour. It's through August 13th in North America, so check your listings. We hope to see you.
Yep, awesome. Thanks. Whoa, what an awesome dude! What an interview! I was really just beside myself after that. I think it's an amazing story, and if you don't know the story, there will be a book and there will be a documentary, and you will have a chance to learn more. I think we only touched on a few things. I'm really glad I got to ask about Spirit of '76. I definitely remember being a kid and my older brother Sam bringing that movie home. I don't know where he rented it. Maybe Tower Records. Tower in our town in West Covina there had a video rental spot like in the back of it, and you could bring home videos. I remember watching Twin Peaks for the first time on VHS there. I think we missed it when it was on TV, or I missed it as a kid. But you've seen Jim Jarmusch films, and the Spirit of '76 was part of that. This thing that blew my mind. There was such a '70s revival there, or no, '70s revival there in the late '80s, early '90s, and it was hilarious. And Steven, wow, what a great dude! So stoked I got to talk to him. Go to reddkross.com. That's REDDCROSS.com. Also go to intheredrecords.com and pre-order the record, buy the record. It's self-titled, Redd Kross. It sounds amazing. You're gonna love it. Also keep an eye out for the film, like we said, the documentary. Hopefully we'll be getting distribution soon. You can find it on all the streamers, as well as a book coming to finer book selling establishments shortly. I really just can't thank Steven enough. I can't thank you guys enough for hanging with me, listening through to these fun interviews. Please find me on Instagram at Randy S. Randall. You can email the show hyphenate@gmail.com. Aaron Farley and myself will be back on Monday to discuss this and probably 10 other things that have nothing to do with this, as we are prone to do. Really, really such a pleasure. I'm smiling ear to ear still, just remembering that great interview. So, thank you. Leave reviews for me wherever you have the reviews to leave. I think it helps the algorithms, helps the computers know that the show's good and it should be recommended to other people. And most importantly, tell your friends. If you like this show, or you think somebody else would get a kick out of the show, and you dig it, and you think other people would dig it, tell them, go listen to it. Go search for Hyphenate with Randy Randall, and let them know that I exist, that the show exists, and spread the word. I think that's really the best way that people find out about stuff. And if you are a Hyphenate, or a Hyphenate, you can email me and give me suggestions for people to talk to. I mean, I'm not short on interviews. There's plenty of people, and I got so much stuff backlogged. But I'm always happy to hear about new bands, new artists, new things. Yourself, if you are one of these people, reach out. I'm not above meeting somebody new and talking to them, getting to know them more on the pod. Hyphenate halftime@gmail.com. Best way to get a hold of me here for the pod. and I'll see you on Monday. Have a good weekend.
Raymond Pettibone was in the corner doing his art, and it was shocking and amazing, and I had to kinda act like, "Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I get it."